Welcome to my little corner of this great big crazy world, where we can laugh and play until reality comes unfurled.
Hello and welcome to Corey's Corner. It's been a while, and it is, of course, a Mental Health Monday, and we will be talking about trust today. Tricky thing, that trust. But before we get into that, let's say hi to the chat. First off, we have Massgrave Hale. He says, good to see you back, Corey. It's good to be back, sir. It's been a weird-ass year so far. Honestly. Weird. And of course, the ever-loyal and ever-present Vince Womack. He's a wonderful mod we have here on our channel, and you can catch him in the chat all over the place. He's a great guy. Excuse me. Before we begin, make sure you go ahead and check out my Bandcamp. I've got a new song. Link is in the description. You can check it out here, coreyharrison.bandcamp.com. It is a heavy metal rock song that is pretty damn good. It's called Hope. We will be running a full preview of said song here in a little bit. And of course, Vince is protesting everything good I just said about him. He says it's all lies, all lies. Yes, yes. Of course it's all lies. Why wouldn't it be the truth? I mean, oh my gosh. And over on the Rumble side, we have Vince Womack. He says, also here, Hail. What up, buddy? Good to see you on both sides of things. Yes, sir. Trust is a tricky-dicky situation, ladies and gentlemen. And we've all been burned. We've all been screwed over by somebody at some point, whether it be an actual person or a corporation or some kind of weird shit like that. It happens all the time. And trusting people is one of the hardest things you could ever do in your entire life. Period. Hail to One Man Show. Great to see you, my friend. Awesome, awesome. Vince Womack says, where did the hair go? Well, when I got sick in February, it actually wound up getting me so dehydrated that it destroyed all of my keratin structures. So my hair got destroyed. It became super brittle. And when I went to comb it, it yanked out a gigantic chunk over here. And that was that. I had to cut my hair, ruined my thumb, my fingernails. It ruined like my teeth. All kinds of stupid shit happened. I'm just happy to not be sick anymore because compared to the flu that I went through, I would take, COVID 3 times consecutively over that any day of the week or any minute of existence. Honestly, it was fucking terrible. But anyway, trust. The first real question you have to ask yourself is what makes us trust people in general? Well, why do we even bother? Right? Because a lot of the times we just wind up getting screwed because humanity is filled with a bunch of assholes, more or less. As Lieutenant Joe Kendo said about my lovely state of Colorado, if being an asshole were illegal, half the state of Colorado at least would be in jail. But unfortunately, it's not against the rules to be an asshole. I shouldn't say unfortunately, because I'm an asshole all the time and I'd be in jail for life because it is, fuck people. But anyway, trust. One of the biggest influencers we have towards trusting other people is our belief towards humanity. And I'm going to be a little bit of doomy gloomy on this. And personally, I don't have a good view of humanity. A lot of people don't. So it really breaks down to what is your basic belief regarding humanity? A lot of people believe that humans are born inherently good and they are corrupted over time and et cetera, et cetera. So they're not necessarily untrustworthy from the beginning. However, I will point out that humans start lying as early as 6 months, as it's been documented. So that's kind of a tricky situation, right? Then there's other people who believe that humanity is born inherently evil and they have to learn good traits in order to become trustworthy, decent individuals, which I also think is a huge load of shit. Because I personally hold the belief that people are born blank canvases, and whatever shit you dump into them or their parents dump into them is what you get out. Yes, there's broader society, etc., but I just think we're all blank slates, and whatever fucked up shit our parents throw at us and society throws at us goes a long way into shaping who we are as individuals. And as such, gives a lot of reasons why we probably shouldn't just inherently trust people. Okay, let's talk to the chat real quick. One Man Show says trust is a bridge of glass. Yes, and it only takes a little pebble to fucking fracture that thing into a billion pieces. Mass Grave says nope, we're savages from the beginning. We have to learn to be good humans. See? He says, I don't think it's necessarily evil, though. And that's an important distinction there, because you can be a savage and not be evil, because that's just what you know. Anyway, Vince Womack says kids have to test the grounds, how far they can take things and what they can get away with. This is very true. And it's also a very important aspect of development and living and being a person in general. You know what I mean? And, One Man Show says, I never trust babies. I know. You never know what's on their mind. You never know what they're going to do next. Are they going to puke on you? Are they going to pull your chest hair? Are they going to stare at you in a way that makes you uncomfortable? I don't know. But babies. But once you get past a certain point, you have to start looking at certain aspects. And one of the things that makes a person trustworthy, in my opinion, is whether or not they are honest. And I know that should be a given, but there's different levels of honesty that play into trusting someone. And that's also a weird thing to say, but it's 100% the truth. We are all aware of outright fabrications. We are all aware of sins of omission. We are very aware of the various things that go into lying and such. But what makes us trust people beyond the belief that they're either good or evil or somewhere in between is a huge hodgepodge of crazy ass factors. Sorry. Germ 404. What's up, bro? He says, not many people are honest anymore. No, they're not. And I love that freaking thumbnail. Dude. Yeah. JJK is amazing, by the way. Gojo. Badass. All-powerful Gojo. Man. But anyway. One of the many factors that go into whether or not we trust someone, and I know this is going to seem kind of weird for some people, but it should make sense for most. It's whether or not they're similar to you and in how many ways they are similar to you. He says, you can thank your nephew for that. Well, tell him I said what's up, and that's an awesome thumbnail. But this is actually one of the biggest portions of trust and one of the biggest manipulators towards forcing a trustful situation. We see this in marketing a lot, where that's a guy who looks like me. That's a guy who sounds like me. He has similar features, or, I have that car, or same hair color, etc., etc. And this is enough to actually build a minor bond to make you like the individual enough to semi-trust them. And of course, I'm not speaking of my viewers in general. I like to think that they're a little bit more high-brained, like actual thinkers than most people. And in saying that, if you're directly influenced by just someone being similar to you, you need to pull your head out of your ass and, for lack of a better term, wake the fuck up. Because seeing somebody who looks like you pitching a product or playing in a play or something like that doesn't mean you should automatically think that they're trustworthy. Okay? It's literally, we've all been fucked by all kinds of different people. So, One Man Show says, I'm honest enough for people to hate me for it. Me too. Me too, in a lot of different ways. Massgrave says, I feel that one man show. Uh, Vince Womack says, one man show. Does this dress make my ass look big? And the more and more on why I'm wearing a dress. Yeah, that's concerning, Vince. You should probably chill out a little bit. It's a little early for sundresses. But anyway, Germ404 says a lot of people are concerned with opinions, to be truly honest. Yes. And opinions is another big aspect of trust that we have to be careful with, because we can trust someone's opinions, but we have to own up to the fact and recognize the fact that people are fallible. They make mistakes all the time. Their opinions are misinformed, as we see in a large population of society these days in Western society. And we see this in social media. We see it in news broadcasting, movies. We see it in content creation here on YouTube. And the opinions of a person can seem almost like they're fact if they're backed by enough stuff. But you have to remember that you can't trust someone's opinions ever, because opinions are so heavily colored by emotion over fact that oftentimes they are a gray mass of unsurety that makes you go down the wrong path a lot. So when it comes to opinions, you need to just like not even take that shit with a grain of salt. Fucking be skeptical about that. Okay, be so skeptical that you question everything to the point that they think you don't trust them. Because if they think you don't trust them, then you might force them into an honest, actual reaction regarding their opinions on whether or not they're ignorant towards a large portion of what they believe, and etc. Now, similarity is one of the things that we talked about earlier. But another huge thing is familiarity. Okay. And familiarity is one of the biggest fucking manipulators that you see in today's society. One man show says your ass makes your ass look big, and you're wearing a dress because you felt like it. That's fair. That's fair. Point to the one man show. Yes, 15 love. But I think that's how that goes. I don't know. But anyway, so familiarity is something that is easily used to manipulate trust standing, as I will call it. And we see this with celebrities, politicians. We see this with friends that we haven't, like, if you're familiar with someone and you haven't talked to them in 10 years and they come up to you with a great get rich quick scheme, obviously that person's changed over a while, and you probably shouldn't trust them just because you're familiar with who they are. Yes. One man show says, yes, I have been asked those things before. And the celebrity aspect of familiarity generates an ungodly amount of trust that shouldn't exist. Okay. And I say shouldn't, not as an irrational absolute, but as an actual fact. It shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't be able to see Samuel L. Jackson and go, oh, I'm going to get that credit card. I trust him. It's got to be a good card if Samuel L. Jackson has it, because he says motherfucker like a champion. Oh my gosh, I've seen Keanu Reeves in like 40 million movies, and now he's endorsing this thing. I should totally get it because he's such a wonderful person. You can't trust people like that. Okay, even if it's Keanu Reeves, who doesn't actually do celebrity endorsements of a lot of stuff, just because they're familiar to you doesn't mean you can trust them. This especially goes for politicians in today's world. We're familiar with Joe Biden. He's been around for fucking 8 million years in politics. He's been in the face of the United States people since most of us weren't even born yet. And that generates a sense of familiarity, which for a lot of people, especially if they're blue people, it generates trust, so that, oh my gosh, whatever he does is so good and it's got to be the right answer. And that's just not the way things work. And it also kind of comes into play with Trump too, because if you're like me, you were raised with seeing Trump all over the place in movies, TV shows, wrestling matches, fucking name it, the news all the time. And this generates some form of familiarity for a lot of people. Now, granted, Trump has a much more crass public image, I guess you could say, than Biden does. But the reality of it is he's using the same tactics to generate a trust that may or may not be justified. And this just comes to the portion of you need to be a free thinker in these types of things to actually verify whether or not you're trusting the right people in the political spectrum. This goes all the way from the presidency of the United States, the least powerful fucking seat in the entire world, all the way down to your local representative in your municipalities. Anyway, Mass Graves says it's almost like id takes all of its strategy from its familiarity concept. Yes. Yes. Familiarity is a huge deal. Vince Womack says, I'll only take that credit card if it is really Sam Jackson's credit card with all his money backing it. 100% agree with that. Go for that one. One Man Show says familiarity breeds contempt. It can, which is why 99.99999% of the world population sucks. Yes. See, that familiarity is a double-edged sword of trust because you can become familiar with someone for reasons that make you trust them. Germ 404 says, got you some coffee. Wow. So the same things that can make you trust a person through familiarity are also the same people that are also the same things that can make you dislike an individual. And I say that because you have a different standard than anyone else watching this stream. Okay. And I will get to the Ko-Fi comment in just a second. But the same things that you see as good characteristics, other people will see as bad characteristics. That's just a given in the human world. Now, there's an old saying that a person who's friend to everyone should be trusted by none. And that's the fucking truth of it. But the other side of familiarity is the fact that it can breed contempt. Contempt is the one human emotion that I suggest the moment it manifests, you're done. Just walk away from whatever relationship or conversation you have going on. If contempt enters it, there's no recovery. And I say that because contempt is bred from a feeling of moral superiority or something along those lines. Don't put that as a preaching from the Bible kind of quote, but when you're familiar with someone and contempt enters into it, that typically means that you feel in some way, shape, or form that you or the other person, whoever's feeling the contempt, is morally superior. And you, as a person, should just walk away from that because they are not a trustworthy individual if they're meeting you with contempt in any way, shape, or form. Vince Womack says, sounds more like brown nosing. This is true, but brown nosing, for context, this is talking about friend to everyone, trusted by no one. He says it sounds like brown nosing, kind of, but it's one of the most common forms of manipulation out there. Be friendly. Not a good thing. Someone who's overly friendly and never shows any emotions but positive, bubbly, oh my gosh, I love you guys, shouldn't be trusted in any way, shape, or form because they're probably about to snap and they don't have great mental hardiness, for lack of a better term. See, One Man Show gets it. He says, I can't think of any factor that would make me trust anyone. That's because he and I share the same belief, probably, in that trust should be earned. Not given right offhand, earned every second of the way. And now we pop on over to Ko-Fi to take a look here. Germ 404 for $30. Thank you, brother. He says, loser. I can't argue with that. Can't. No arguing with that. But I mean, this brings up a very important aspect in the trust discussion. If you're a person who blanket trusts people where you're like, oh my gosh, everybody's wonderful, I love them all, then take whatever offense you want to this. You're an ignorant fuck. Trust is something that should be established over time. Trust is something that has to be built upon, and it has to be fostered like a proper relationship in order to become not only healthy, but effective. Now, effective trust means that you can, in fact, understand where this person's strengths and weaknesses lie to the point that you know where you can rely on them. Yes, Vince Womack earned like respect. That's right. That's right. But that's a different discussion. Okay. If you're not taking the time to earn trust by behaving like a respectable human being, in a manner that's actually conducive to said process, then you're going to be alone a lot. All right. Now, on the flip side, if you do nothing but make people earn your trust, then you're still probably going to be alone a lot. But it's probably going to be a little bit more comfortable than if everybody keeps failing to prove that they're trustworthy. This, however, goes into, yes, the most respected statement in the world. Trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. My brain broke on that one. Ooh. Vince says, always happy, no emotion, no other emotion. Sounds like a really big flag. Very much so. Red flags all over the place. Now, when it comes to trusting people, there's varying degrees of trust that you should that, in my personal opinion, you should stop at, depending on your relationship. Come on. Yeah. Thank you, Massgrave. Feel that one right here. Now, personally, this is just me, I don't trust doctors, politicians, lawyers, or educators in any way, shape, or form because I've seen what they are and what their ultimate goals are. I don't care if you're the fucking world's biggest bleeding heart pro bono defense lawyer in the world. I'm not going to fucking trust you because you're in the legal realm. The legal realm and politics both share the same thing, and that's the fact that they are, guess what? Designed to manipulate the general population. That being said, I don't trust those people at all. I don't trust doctors because they usually don't seem to know what they're talking about or what's going on. You know what I mean? Nate D says, "Hail, Corey. I haven't seen you streaming in a while." Hail, Nate D. Yeah, life happened, bro. It decided to kick me in the nuts. Really, really, really hard and a lot of times in a short period of time. But I'm better now. I'm back and everything is fantastic. I think. I don't know. I'll get back to you once the insurance company makes up their mind. But and you also shouldn't, according to Vince Womack, you shouldn't trust women with your money or condoms in general. I can't argue with that. But anyway, the closer your relationship is with someone, the more you have to be able to trust them in order to have a good relationship. Nate D says, "Kick it back." I tried. Life restored that groin. Yes. And then it restomped it. That's right. You're fucking hilarious, Massgrave. Oh, I see. He retracted those. My bad. It doesn't matter, bro. This is not the land of grammar and punk and like, yeah, coherence. I don't know how to, but hail to the Basco scenario. He says, "Sup, bud? Hope you're doing well, bud." I am, sir. And Germ404 says, you'll get there. I know. I'm not worried about it. Anyway, back to the varying degrees of trust that we have for people. Now, obviously, politicians, doctors, educators, lawyers, judges, all those people, don't trust them a single fucking bit. But then when you start getting a little bit closer to home, you have to start becoming a little bit more trustworthy. I will not openly tell you to trust the police. I won't, because I don't trust the police in any way. However, the police and firefighters are individuals who technically should have some level of trustworthiness. Now, of course, depending on if you're in, Chicago, New York, some BFE town in the middle of nowhere in Colorado, it doesn't matter. There's varying levels of trust per officer. And that's why when it comes to police, I don't trust the organization as a whole, but I will trust individual officers who have shown me reason to believe that they're not complete assholes. Complete assholes. Because if you're a cop, you kind of have to have that little bit of an asshole in you. Otherwise, you're not going to be good at your job. Just saying. Now, stepping it even closer to home, you should probably be able to trust your family. Not saying that you can. There's a lot of people who have families that are completely untrustworthy. They're just jackasses. They're fucking manipulative. They're complete fucking garbage. Now, this, of course, is on an individual level, okay, that you have to decide whether or not to trust your family. But the important thing to remember there is when it comes to trusting your family, you can't rely on outside sources to give you any information on whether or not they're trustworthy. You have to be able to use your own moralistic understanding and your own history to decide whether or not these people are worth trusting. For instance, I trust my brother implicitly, 100%. I have no issues with that. That's because we've had a long, rocky history of trying to get through life's groin kicks together, and that builds trust. And I trust him almost as much as I trust my wife. Not quite, just because she is literally who I bound my soul to for eternity. So I trust her more than anyone else in this entire world. Now, let's see here. Massgrave says, trust family as much as anyone else. They have to earn it. I don't disagree. I don't disagree. Make them prove it, but you can't rely. And he gives me a Vader scream. No. Yeah. Go figure. But anyway, when it comes to trusting your family, you have to be able to make your own decisions. But you can't allow other people's ideals of what a good family is corrupt what you know. Okay, because we've seen this a lot in college students where they'll go off to college as a happy, bubbly individual. And then as they come back home or something like that, they've taken some poli-sci class that's twisted their brain. And all of a sudden they're sucking down soy and they're fucking cutting their tits off or what the fuck ever, right? That is a drastic change that changes the personality and also changes how they view you as a family member or etc. So you need to be able to mentally insulate yourself against the outside influences of people who seem to have authority, which is a great segue to talk about authority as a trust manipulation tool. Love you too, bro. One Man Show says, as last of my line, I trust their discretion. All right. That's fair. That's fair. Now, authority figures. Yeah, dude, you're not kidding. Vince Womack says those before and after college pics are eye-opening. It is one of the most destructive, manipulative, and outright terrible times, in my personal opinion, in a young person's life is college, because they leave everything familiar to them and they run off to some place filled with people who think and act like they know everything, but actually know exactly dick. And I mean sucking it mostly, because college students are fucked. No offense if you're a college student. Just kidding. Take whatever offense you want, because I still don't care. However, All right. Authority as a trust mechanism, all right, is one of the stupidest things you could ever fucking rely on. All right. And the reason I say that is because just because someone has a position of authority does not make them intelligent, does not make them trustworthy, and it does not make them a good person. It means they might have been able to bilk everybody into getting a position of power that places them in an area where you have no choice but to trust them. Oh my gosh, politicians, motherfuckers. All right. I gotta say this just outright. Politicians are the least worthy of the authority that they hold. And that's because they're often put into place by individuals who are not only ignorant of political processes and political issues, but they're also ignorant as to the societal impact of making these types of choices. Go figure. Over on the Rumble side, we have Pope Metallicus. Hail, sir. He says, you mean people in authority might be manipulative scumbags? I'm shocked. Shocker. Yep. Yep. Vince Womack says, don't listen to what they say. Look at what they do. Exactly. One Man Show says, I tried college. It didn't take. It's not for everybody. Honestly, if I had to go back, I would take a completely different college that would have costed me probably $150,000 less. And yes, that's me bitching about it. But anyway, hail to Paris Vibes Jr. All right. JR. I don't know what that means. But anyway, so people in authority figures, as authority figures, are not trustworthy, in my personal opinion, unless they've done something to earn it. Now, that's really hard to find in a political spectrum because what have they done to earn their position of authority and control over us that we should trust them with the future and running of the entire country? Now, for most of them, it's literally just the idea that they went to school to learn how to run other people's lives. That's a problem. Paris Vibes says Georgian Jr. All right. Sweet. But anyway, so politicians are the least trustworthy individuals in the entire world. And you're right. You shouldn't trust any of them. I'm not sure you should trust any of them ever. Ever. All right. If a person decides that their life calling is running other people's lives, they're not worthy of trust. Period. Show me what they've done in their lives to show that they actually have an understanding of how all this shit works. And of course, if you want to help the channel a little bit, check out my Bandcamp. I got a new track on there called Hope. Make sure you give it a listen at the very least. I forgot to mute my phone. Son of a bitch. All right. Anyway. Now, we see people all the time abusing trust because they're not trustworthy individuals in the first place, but also because humans are impulsive. And impulsivity is one of the many things that you have to watch out for on whether or not an individual is, in fact, trustworthy. Pope Metallicus over on the Rumble side says, in my experience, the people you'd want in charge of society want no part of that job. And that's what makes them so great. That was George Washington. George Washington didn't want to be the leader of a free country. He didn't want to be a leader at all. He wanted to go home. And when they were like, well, we need you, he was like, okay, I'll give you 4 years. And he did. He gave him 4 years and then he went home. Or 8. My brain's breaking on history, but still. The people who will do the best job are often the people that don't want the job, which is greatness is thrust upon them. And I'm sorry, you shouldn't trust anyone who wants to run other people's lives. One Man Show says, I had a full scholarship. It just disagreed with me, probably because I wanted to learn useful and interesting things versus the regurgitated curriculum. How dare you, sir? I am offended. I love free thinkers, and you should never give that up. But anyway, you should also listen to the words people use on whether or not they are trustworthy. And yes, I agree, Jeremy. That would have been a much better choice. Trade school. Kind of. I mean, I do have this master's in clinical psych, so it's kind of helpful, but at the same time, I'm using it for YouTube. But anyway, so how people speak, especially when it comes to clarity of speech, is a huge part of trust. Okay. And it's something you should pay attention to. People who use quantifiers, trust me, bro, or honestly, or like, this is the God honest truth, or people who say that are often lying, even if it's half lie, uh, sin of omission, etc., etc. When they have to quantify that they're being honest, excuse me, it's probably an issue. Because they want you to believe them no matter what. Oh my gosh, like seriously, bro. And then you also have to understand that vaguity, I don't know, being vague in speech also generates manipulation. All right. And any type of manipulation being rendered upon you or anyone you know should be met with complete and total skepticism. Okay. And when it comes to vague speech, if they're not giving you enough detail for you to understand what they're saying completely, then you either need to ask questions or you need to stop talking to this individual about important things. All right. Pope Metallicus over here says it was 8 years, but they offered him essentially a kingship of America. That's right. His response is, I didn't fight the war against George to become George first. Legend, 100%. Mass Grave says, the one thing I hate about college, the well-rounded education stance is just a way to steal money. Yes, look at the University of Phoenix a few years ago. Hence the reason I dropped out of their actual on-campus shit is because they were defrauding the GI Bill, of all things. Like, what? I'm so glad I walked away from that school. And no, I wasn't just online. They actually have campuses and they have actually good teachers. But the corruption within the institution, can't ignore that. And to manipulate your morals. You're not wrong. Not wrong once again. Now, this brings up another interesting conundrum in today's modern society is whether or not we should, in any way, shape, or form, trust organizations. And when I say organizations, I mean corporations, you name it, small businesses, environmental activists, or whoever just happens to like tickle your fancy at the moment. What? Hail to Christian Delorme. What's up, buddy? Bonjour. Bonjour. I personally can't trust a corporation. Mostly because they are not particularly trying to control our lives as much as they are trying to steadily influence it through constant exposure. And we've seen over time that we can't trust any type of organization, period. Yes, in Canada, Christian Delorme says in Canada, our institutions are corrupted. Yes, here in the United States, it is the same way. I would put forth the EPA as a strong example of this. Okay, their job supposedly is to protect the environment, Environmental Protection Agency, right? They recently got in trouble for illegally allowing a chemical company to not only not file leakage reports and stuff like that, but they allowed them to use dangerous materials that were already established as not only carcinogenic, but out and out harmful to human health to be used in the general public. We saw this with the insecticides and the weed eating chemicals. Okay. The chemicals within that were found to be banned chemicals. The EPA, because of what I'm assuming is a healthy kickback, that's fucking right. The EPA is corrupt and they take bribes. I'm assuming they allowed it to happen because of these things, right? Roundup. Yes. Roundup. That's right. And so their job is to protect the environment and, of course, the human beings that exist therein. But because of their easily corruptible nature as a governmental organization and as a corporation, more or less, they are allowed, or they were allowed to do this until they got caught. And now, like, I never trusted the EPA in the first place because how is them charging me more money to get a plastic bottle going to protect the environment from said plastic bottle? I'm still going to use the plastic bottle, but ugh. Pope Metallica says, never trust an activist organization. True facts there. Their entire business model relies on the problem they advocate never being solved. Autism Speaks is a great example. You are correct, sir. Yes. Any type of activist organization, because they automatically have a biased operating standard, shouldn't be trusted in any way. If we want to go beyond environmental activism, we can take a look at Buy Large Mansions, or as they're called in general, BLM. Now, these individuals, they took money that was supposed to help out Black lives and Black communities, and then they spent it on buying large mansions for themselves. Goodness. Massgrave is a horticulturist, and he says Roundup is bred into crops now. Fun. Money, 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 money. Money. Money will ruin everything eventually. Yes, yes, it will. Vince Womack says, or look to the FDA. This is very true. They pass foods and medicines and only recall them once they turn out to be bad for you. Go figure. And they approve things that are well established as being harmful a lot of the times too. They just do it under the guise of this is a new process, so it can't be harmful anymore, or things like that. For that, I would point you to do some research in tricyclic antidepressants, SSRI, medications, etc. Anything to do with correcting your mental health, take a look at it. Take a look at the side effects. All right? Do some research and you'll see why the FDA cannot be trusted. They approve things that's like, please take this medication if you're suffering from plaque psoriasis. Warning, it may cause heart attack and your brain to explode. In some cases, it's been known to make your eyes bleed and a random occurrence of Ebola. You know, it's just simple things like that. And trust is a big conversation. Like, dang. But interpersonal trust, to just change gears for the last like 15 minutes or so, interpersonal trust is something, as we established earlier, that has to be earned, but it also has to be maintained. Okay, because as we know, people change over time. So if you trust someone with your secrets and then for some reason Betty over here knows exactly word for word what you told Carla, then maybe you shouldn't trust Carla anymore. Just saying. Vince Womack says that's not something I would call a side effect, right? Right. It's a pretty hardcore negative effect, period. Even if it's just some of the time. But interpersonal trust and relationships is kind of like an ebb and flow process, as are a lot of things in life. And we often start a relationship, for example, by implicitly trusting this individual that they won't hurt us in ways emotionally, physically, etc., and that we'll be able to safely spend time with them. Now, there's a lot of ways that this gets fucked up. Maybe the person is a narcissist who's really good at putting on a front, but then drops it as soon as they have the opportunity. Maybe that. Vince says, caress that like button and hug subscribe. That's right. He says it on both platforms just to make sure we don't miss anything. But, sorry, I'm burpy all this time. One of the reasons trust breaks down within an interpersonal relationship, whether it's a friendship or an actual romantic relationship or anything like that, is communication. All right. We eventually reach a point where we believe that people should know exactly what we're thinking or doing or talking about at any given moment. And the fact is, because of the fallibility regarding the human mind and especially the attention span and stuff like that, sometimes it doesn't happen. So we can start inferring that minor offenses or slights or whatever it is we're perceiving them to be are much bigger the issues than they are. This is why when you're establishing rapport, if you don't know what that means, Google it. When you're establishing rapport with someone, it's incredibly important to communicate effectively. All right. And this isn't just like romantic relationships and friendships, but this is true in business as well. But we're primarily focusing on interpersonal relationships. So if your communication skills are lacking, then you need to work on them. If you don't trust someone because they aren't communicating properly, communicate that with them. You can build rapport even if it takes years in order to have a trustworthy relationship with someone. Of course, within that time frame, you'll be able to tell whether or not this person's worth your time or whether or not you should just kick them to the curb like a $2 hooker. But that's ultimately up to you. Now, what each of us decides is an adequate amount of communication or an adequate style of communication or what good rapport looks like, it changes based on person to person. All right. Hail to Rambling Rodeo. He says, hey, talks a lot. It's Normie. What is up, Normie? Dude, what is with no beard? No beard, no hair. Yeah, shaved the beard in December. Made $60 off of doing that live. Go check that out. It's called The Cutoff. And yeah, the hair got destroyed by sickness. Recap earlier in this episode. But Vince Womack says, is it too soon to bring up women again when wifey expects you to be able to read her mind? That, my friend, literally boils down to communication and pointing out to your wifey or the wifey or anyone else for that matter that you are not a fucking psychic. My favorite thing, since I'm a psychologist, is to tell people I'm a psychologist, not a psychic. That is not how things work. I say that to all kinds of people all the time. He says, yes, Carla of the water cooler and her twin sister Cindy of the coffee station. Indeed. Big old Carla is a chatty little beast. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But you have to trust yourself more than anyone else. All right. And if you're not trusting yourself, especially within a relationship, then you need to start doing a self inventory on whether or not you have the right, for lack of a better term, mental faculties in order to establish consistency and dedication to your own beliefs and your own way of life and stuff like that. And if you don't trust yourself, then it's very important to have someone who can help keep you in check. All right. And if you suffer from a mental disorder like histrionic disorder or a borderline personality disorder or bipolar, one or two, pick, oftentimes this can be a very stressful and almost impossible task to complete. If you can't find someone to keep you in check for all of your weird little idiosyncrasies and your eccentricities and all the weird shit that happens in your life, then you just need to keep searching. Just saying. But if you don't trust yourself, then self-inventory the choices you've made, self-inventory the mental tools that you have available to you in order to start establishing a trust with yourself. And you need to be able to find someone who can teach you to actually go through and do things like thought stopping. When you have that intrusive thought, so you can't trust yourself with your thoughts, you have that intrusive thought, you need to find a way to stop it and replace it. If you don't stop it, it'll run wild. It's kind of like a craving, all right, with a cigarette or alcohol or something like that. You know, the craving itself only lasts about 2 seconds. But once it's hooked itself into your brain, it becomes an urge. And that urge can last all day long. And you need to be able to trust yourself to notice the craving and cut it off. You need to be able to stop those thoughts, push them away, and replace them with something that is actually slightly more beneficial to you. And we can get into that at some point. Rambling Rodeo says it's nice to talk to someone that is not a friend or wife or otherwise. That brings us to an interesting point, actually. Strangers are easier for us to trust with true information than people we know. Why? Because they don't know us. They have no connection to us. And what are they going to do to our lives with this information? Probably jack shit, depending on the information. If you're doing something illegal and you tell a stranger that, you're probably stupid. But just saying. One Man Show says someone to tell you the voices are lying. Rodeo says, indeed, or that you are not crazy. Your mind is your worst enemy sometimes. Yes, my mind is often my personal worst enemy, and I'm sure that a lot of my viewers feel the same way sometimes because we get locked inside there and we don't really have an outlet to like get rid of it. But when you break things down, you have to recognize where your control lies, especially with your own mind. Hail to TZ Burton. He says, hey, Corey, Vince, chat. I'm at work. We'll watch the replay. Very nice. Very nice. And Germ404 says all the time regarding your mind being your own worst enemy. And this is where, like, understanding your own thought processes and to use some buzzwords, your own triggers is vitally important to be able to function in the world. And your triggers can be anything from personally held biases that you may or may not be aware of. It can be a situation that reminds you of traumatic events. It, could be a phrase or a word that someone you didn't like used to use all the time. So now you associate that with them and it triggers you. And of course, I'm using trigger because I lack a better word. I mean, I could say stimuli. I could say something. But when it boils down to it, you have to be acutely aware of yourself more so than anyone else in order to achieve a state of trust in life. Because if you don't trust your own decisions, the chances are you're going to put yourself in situations with people who prefer to dominate and make decisions for you. Christian Delorme says, control your urges. I will not stare at that huge cleavage. Wow. One Man Show says, I don't know. I'm straight with myself most of the time, and the rest of the time I know that I'm not. Well, and that's totally fine. Sometimes we have to lie to ourselves. I lie to myself sometimes just to get through the day on whether or not I'm up for it, because sometimes I'll run into a depressive episode, and I have to just repeatedly tell myself it's just a phase. I'll get over it. I'm be fine. I'm push through this. I'm going to get to the next day. Tomorrow will be better, etc., 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 etc. And oftentimes I'm lying to myself because a depressive episode can last anywhere from 1 day up to fucking 2 years. And you just have to be able to lie to yourself in ways that aren't destructive. You have to find the lies that actually help you get through your day when you're dealing with yourself, because a lot of the times we'll have faulty thought patterns and we'll have faulty intrusive thoughts that just kind of kick us in the nutsack and keep us lower than we should be. uh Embrace the suck. Not quite, but kind of. uh Rambling Rodeo says, "Oh my god, depression sucks." Yes, it does. It's absolutely fucking terrible. As a person who suffers from PDD, which is persistent depressive disorder, um, I 100% understand how that is. Uh, Christian Delorme says, "I find music is just great for the depressed mind." Oftentimes. One Man Show says, "The max is only 2 years." No, unfortunately not. If it was, I would have been over mine a while ago. Um, I the persistent depressive disorder is major depression that lasts for longer than 2 years, um, on more days than not, if that makes any sense. And of course, this can run your entire life. So far it kind of has for me. Uh, and then of course there's PTSD. I do suffer from some of that, but I have a twisted mind, so my PTSD doesn't bother me as much as it used to. Um, but you have to be able to trust yourself in any situation, and if you can't, then you need to be able to check yourself in any situation, um, whether it be through social support structure, or if the only person you have to rely on is yourself, then you need to build yourself up to a mental hardiness to where you are not affected by pretty much anything. I know that's impossible to not be affected by anything, short of being a sociopath, but that's kind of the goal you're shooting for when you're self-managing everything. Is you want to be able to get to the point where you're more indifferent to your suffering than anything else, because if you're indifferent to your suffering, then you can at least manage your symptoms and manage your way through it. If you have the ability to seek out aid, then do so. Seek aid and succor. It doesn't really matter where it comes from, as long as it's a reliable and trustworthy source. I will say that if you're going to look for a mental health counselor, shop around. Okay. Don't go with the first asshole who has a bunch of plaques on his wall and talks all pretty. You don't want to do that. You know, One Man Show says, "I'm up to about 34 years. Thought I was going to get a break." You can get a break. It just takes a lot of work, bro. It really does. Um, and oftentimes you can't do it alone. And I know we've had this conversation before, but I just want to say that you are a highly valued member of my personal community. And if you need to be able to, if you have an emergency that you need to talk to somebody, One Man Show, hit me up. All right. I'm over there on Rumble, or I mean, Gilded. Um, just hit me up. We can have a conversation. And if you need someone as like crisis intervention or something like that, I'm happy to help you, my friend. Uh, as a friend, not as a mental health professional, because that would be illegal. Anyway, and of course, Rambling Rodeo says, "You are not alone, One Man Show. This community is fantastic at times. So absolutely reach out, my friend." Mass Grave says, "I think Hannibal would have been the perfect therapist for me." Of course, speaking of Hannibal Lecter, except for when his curiosity kicked in, probably. I mean, honestly, he community. Yeah, yeah, I know that's a dirty word. Dirty word. I don't know what else to say. Oh wow. Christian Delorme says, "And I left you a tip, just the tip." Just a tip. Let's take a look. Boop. Refresh. Christian Delorme for $3. Hail. He says, do not eat the yellow snow. There's my tip. Watch out where the Huskies go. Don't you eat that yellow snow. Anyway, a one-man show says, I would not inflict my problems on anyone else. That would be rude. First of all, that's a pretty negative thought, in my personal opinion. And don't take that as an attack. Because if you see your problems as something you're inflicting on someone else, then, well, I mean, obviously you're going to have trouble developing a trustworthy relationship with anybody, but you have to open yourself up enough that you don't stagnate and continue to damage yourself. Vince Womack says, is fellowship already outdated? This is going to come as a shock to the people within our community. I don't think there's any fellowship. Fellowship is the wrong term. It's not. Never has been. The fandom made sense. Fellowship, no. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we're at the hour, and I know we didn't get through everything that I wanted to get through with Trust, but we're going to go ahead and bounce. Catch me tonight, Dick's News US, right here on Talks A Lot Entertainment, and of course over Monday Meltdown on Comics Division's channel with the Dick's Division boys. And make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and maybe the notification. Who knows? Massgrave says, damn, call out city. Just call it how it is, man. How I see it. Christian Delorme says, laughter is the best. Why do women prefer sleeping with truckers instead of YouTubers? We always back up before unloading. That's a good one. That's a good one. I like that. Vince Womack says, circle of friends. Yes. Friends. Yes. Peace. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, stay sexy. Don't get murdered. And as always, have a wonderful time. But here is my newest song, now available on Bandcamp over at CoreyHarrison.bandcamp.com, called Hope. I'll catch you guys later.
Join in the celebration of the assassination of a future that was never more than a dream. Filled in the night with hope in its eyes and love in its heart for you and me.
As the light starts to fade now, feel the social disease as it programs the mind to deify the machine. Where will we run to escape?
If you're searching for hope now, 404 not found. Now dawns the day of the digital slave, where capitulation comes so easily. Manipulated veneration of a penal generation, passing down the cultures of fear and greed. Hearts, minds, and souls have been bought, traded, sold to the lowest bidder, born to the highest family tree. Those who spoke out are hanging from the boughs, and there's only space left for you